Hannah here.
Johnston here.
Brillo here.
David here.
Guzikowski.
Approval of the minutes of July the 10th. If everybody please take a look at the minutes.
Guzikowski makes a motion. Hello. Guzikowski makes a motion to approve the minutes from July 10th, 2018.
Hannah seconds.
Roll call.
Hannah, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Brillo, aye.
David, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Significant common council actions. Carrie, are you ready?
Yes. Council held a request submitted by Dale DeWitt on behalf of Laverne Boers to rezone a portion of the property shown as Lot 1 on a proposed certified survey map for 3280 East Oakwood Road from A1 Limited Agriculture to RS3 Single Family Residential with a variation request related to the minimum lot width for the proposed lot. And they approved the following: an ordinance to approve a rezoning of the properties at 8300, 8304, 8310, and 8380 South 27th Street and 8370 South Orchard Way to RM1 PUD multifamily residential planned unit development. An ordinance amending the conditions and restrictions in Ordinance 2852 for a conditional use permit for a self-service storage facility, meaning warehousing, for the property at 275 East Drexel Avenue. The extension was approved for 12 months. A resolution approving a certified survey map for Richard Reuven R.W. Howell LLC for the property at 8355 South Howell Avenue. A resolution approving a certified survey map for Island Sock for the properties at 6615 and 6622 South 27th Street. An ordinance adopting an amendment to the comprehensive plan for the properties at 9600 and 9700 South 13th Street and 1001 West Ryan Road. And a resolution approving a certified survey map for John Thompson for the properties at 7781, 7811, and 7869 South 13th Street. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Tonight we have two scheduled public hearings, but we'll start with item 5A, and that is a projected plan and boundaries for TID 16. We will lay out the boundaries and project plan for the tax increment district number 16. Carrie, would you like to read that in?
Official notice of public hearing for the City of Oak Creek, Wisconsin Plan Commission. Please take notice that a public hearing will be held at 6 p.m. or thereafter on Tuesday, July 24th, 2018 in the Common Council chambers on the lower level of City Hall, 8040 South 6th Street, by the City of Oak Creek Plan Commission on the proposed creation of Tax Incremental District Number 16, TID 16, City of Oak Creek, Wisconsin, the proposed boundaries thereof, and the proposed project plan for the district. The purpose of TID 16 is to provide financing for new infrastructure and promote economic development in an area of the city poised for future industrial and commercial growth. Proposed project costs identified in the project plan include cash grants that may be provided by the city to owners, lessees, or developers of the property within the proposed TID 16 pursuant to Wisconsin Statutes Section 66.1105. The purpose of the public hearing is to hear those persons who wish to express their opinions for or against the creation of TID 16, the boundaries of the district, and the project plan. A map, legal description, and project plan for the district can be viewed at the Oak Creek Civic Center, City Hall, by appointment, 8040 South 6th Street, Monday through Friday, between the hours of 7:30 a.m. and 4 p.m. A copy will be provided upon request. Any persons with questions regarding the proposed TID and or the project plans may call the Planning Department at 414-766-7000. Proposed TID number 16 boundaries were shown in the attached map and located within the city limits of the City of Oak Creek, Wisconsin. Dated this 27th day of June, 2018. Catherine Ruski, City Clerk, City of Oak Creek.
Great. Thank you, Carrie. Before we open it up, I am going to have our City Administrator, Andrew Vickers, say a few words.
Mike. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I quickly, hopefully, turn it over to our consultants with Van de Waal and Associates, Dan Johns and Jolena Presti, for a brief presentation and overview of the TID project plan and the process for creating a TID, I want to just make a couple introductory comments, because there's a lot of context and strategy and really handling of logistics that has gone into this potential business park as well as this TID project plan that doesn't immediately leap off the pages of the project plan itself. So why are we here? This really has culminated This is the culmination of a lot of work in a business park that has been in the making for a very long time. One of the principal developers of this business park has owned property, I think, for the better part of 15 years, and has, kind of consistently worked at assembling the various parcels to make for a cohesive and master planned business park for about that same period of time. Furthering that, the available or creating an inventory of business park property in the city of Oak Creek is a strategic goal for this community. It's important for us to have business park land potential to meet demand, to have supply to meet that demand. And what's the end game of that? Well, of course, to take advantage and diversify our tax base, and with the overall goal of stabilizing or even lessening the tax burden on those that call Oak Creek home, as well as our businesses in the community. Growth equals a stable property tax base, and that's really our end goal in any economic development endeavor we undertake. But really, why we're here tonight is a confluence of factors coming together all at once due to the work of many folks in the on the public team and in the private sector, our development partners. We have a great developer partnership. This business park is a joint venture with two local development firms, Capstone Quadrangle and General Capital, Michael Weiss and Mike Faber being the principals. They're very reputable, very competent, and it's been great to work with them to really plan and envision this business park out. Probably most importantly, something I alluded to earlier is the land assemblage. We have never been the developer has never been at a critical mass of having all of the properties under their control to be able to execute a business park. And most importantly, and I don't know, Dan, if you could, actually, never mind. We won't show the, do you have the land swap? That's okay. That's okay. One of the things that we'll show you in the presentation, we'll pull it up, is the fact that Milwaukee County Parks Department actually owns a strip of property through what is really essentially the heart of this business park. The developer has worked on a partnership with Milwaukee County to swap lands for the benefit of the park and for the benefit of the county to really make for a cohesive business park. Without that land swap being a reality, we have a very limited ability to develop this property in a cohesive and intelligent manner. And as you know, the county doesn't divest of property, specifically the Parks Department doesn't divest of property very readily. But all parties in that partnership have realized not only the economic value of jobs and tax base that Milwaukee County shares in, but perhaps most importantly from their perspective and ours, is the environmental improvements that this land swap encounters. This land swap entails. They're getting a piece of property that's a little more environmentally sensitive than what is the strip of property that is a agricultural piece of property at this point. So it hits the county's environmental mission as well. I think that's very important to note. This is not about necessarily just growth and tax base. It's more than that. As a part of that county-city developer partnership, the city will actually be constructing a neighborhood park on acreage in this property, which we can show you when we get into the presentation. We've been looking to site a park in this section of the community for a long period of time, so we hope that through a public process involving the immediate residents in the area, we can put something really something to be proud of in terms of park space down there. If we do not commence these approvals and subsequent entitlements for this business park, with the county having already agreed, it's not as though we can just ask the county in 3 years or whatever we get back around to it, are you ready to have the same deal in place that we had in 2018? It's really important, and that's why there's a bit of a sense of urgency to move forward with the business park now, the lining up of those factors. I think closing out, we've arrived at a really good master plan in partnership with the developer. And as you'll see in the project plan, we wanted to maintain the most flexibility in this tax increment district and how we could implement it. So you'll see in here, and Dan will touch on this in the presentation, we've laid out essentially two side-by-side project plans, or two looks at what this business park could be. One utilizing a large user format that takes up a significant chunk, and another one that looks a little more like a traditional business park in that there's a multiple smaller parcels that can be marketed. This provides us the ability to respond given the geography. This is an appetizing piece of property for a large user, and we want to be prepared for that. So we've done a financial feasibility on both of those models, the increment and the cost associated with that. And I think lastly, as we go through this TID project plan, there is, how should I put this? There is not too much business park development that goes on in the state of Wisconsin, and probably a larger geographic area that isn't the result of a public-private partnership with the city or host municipality being involved. Through the utilization of our tax increment financing tool, which is one of the rare tools that we have and one of the rare arrows in our quiver, we are able to make sure that this development is implemented the way we see fit as a community, on the pace at which we see fit as a community, of course in partnership with our development partners, but essentially control the level and quality of development for our residents. So when we get into the but-for test of the TID, and we can talk a little more about that, just keep that in mind. So with that, I'll turn it over to Van de Waal and Associates for a brief presentation.
There we go. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Plan Commissioners, for having us tonight. I'm Jolena Presti with Van de Waal and Associates. With me here is Dan Johns. We're based in Madison and Milwaukee. And I just wanted to give a brief introduction. We've been working, many of you have seen us before, we've been working with the community for a number of years, done your recent TIF district creations, the Lakefront TIF district, redevelopment districts, and we're excited to put forward what we think is a high-quality project plan. And I will actually turn it over to Dan to give the bulk of the presentation, but I'm here to help answer questions as well.
Good evening, everyone. So for the benefit of our audience here that may not be familiar with TIF as a concept, I thought we'd give a brief introduction. TIF, it stands for Tax Increment Financing, and it is a financial mechanism to spur development in a defined area that, but for the use of TIF, and we'll get into that a little bit as we move along, would not otherwise see the type, magnitude, timing, density of development that is desired by the city of Oak Creek. It uses the taxes from increased property values to fund public projects and achieve financial feasibility of private projects. And because of the financial powers that are given to municipalities by state statute, we believe that it is the single most powerful economic development tool that Wisconsin communities have. So TIF, as a concept, we set a base value, which is the value of the parcels within the district as of this year, 2018, and the taxes that are paid on that base value continue to flow to each of the overlying taxing jurisdictions, which include the city, county, school district, technical college, sewerage district, and any other special districts that might be involved, and any new value that is created on the parcels within the tax increment district flow to a special fund to pay for the project costs that are specifically outlined in the project plan itself. So just to recap some of those key terms, the base value and the value increment is the new value that is created. The tax increment are the revenues that actually flow from that new value that is created over time. The Joint Review Board is actually made up of representatives from each of the overlying taxing jurisdictions, and they ultimately provide the ultimate blessing for the district because they are ultimately foregoing the new taxes that are generated from the district in order to spur economic development, in the hopes that in the long run the increase in tax base will ultimately benefit all parties. And just as a reminder that the TID itself is the tax increment district. That is the physical area that we are talking about and is defined in the project plan. And TIF, tax increment financing, is the financial mechanism. So the project plan requires a number of things required by statute, that we establish a TIF boundary, and only whole parcels can be included in a district, so we can't cross those lines. declare a type of TID which carries with it certain abilities to carry out project costs and has a maximum life of varying number of years. It outlines specific project costs and expenditures that may be undertaken by the city. It projects potential development projects and values, the timing thereof, which ultimately provides the revenue stream to pay for those project costs. The financial feasibility section essentially analyzes the ability of the district's development to pay for the project costs that are contemplated in the time and manner in which they are envisioned, and demonstrates, again, a but-for finding that there is, in fact, a need for the city to provide these kinds of costs, incentives, things like that, and demonstrates consistency with the city's zoning ordinance and comprehensive plan. The but-for test, again, specifically requires that expenditures advance one or more valid public purposes. That might include blight elimination, diversification or additions to the tax base, significant job creation, removing other social, physical hazards, environmental cleanup, improving utilities, roads, infrastructure, transportation, things like that. And but for, again, the use of TIF, development wouldn't occur in the manner, at the values, or within the time frame desired by the city, or that the private sector either can't or won't do on its own. And every project that receives TIF financing ultimately must meet this standard. The specific purpose of TID 16 is to advance necessary site-specific improvements and capital costs for the Ryan Road Business Park, which is at the southeast corner of West Ryan Road and 13th Street, about a quarter mile east of I-94. The project plan does provide for development incentives for certain large-scale job-creating projects subject to a valid development agreement, and supports new complementary industrial and commercial uses along a major industrial corridor in Ryan Road. So here is the proposed boundary, again, at the southeast corner of Ryan and 13th. The county lands that Andrew was referring to is that L-shaped parcel marked number 4 that runs along either side of the Oak Creek Waterway, which runs right along the northern edge of the site. It's primarily open, vacant space for either Parkland Conservancy. It's been used for ag land, and there's a limited number of industrial and single-family residential uses in pockets of this that ultimately were included in the event that sometime down the line they may become available for additional development beyond the scope of the business park concepts that we have been looking at.
That, Dan, just to really underscore this point, if you see the north-south piece of property, the rectangular shaped property there on the map, you'll see that it's very difficult to develop. It's very difficult to develop either east or west of that strip of property, and we would strand a significant amount of property to the east. As you can see there, we would strand a significant amount of property, very likely in perpetuity, from ever being able to develop, and that's significant, obviously, given the geographic location of this next to, the confluence of an interstate and a major highway. So I just wanted to underscore that point again on that, why the county land swap is so critical to this.
That's an excellent point. So we have 2 separate development concepts that are included in the project plan, and we have run financial analysis on both of these, but the first of which is this multiple user concept, which carves the area into a number of parcels and would require a loop road, essentially, with a cul-de-sac to serve a number of lots. There could be as many as 9 under this scenario. Would require a road bridge over the waterway. There's also the opportunity to put in a pocket park along Ryan Road, and then the larger neighborhood city-county park at the southeast corner of the district. This obviously requires a little bit more of roadway construction than the large area concept, the next one, that is anchored primarily by a one single large user and would be served by a cul-de-sac off of Ryan Road with the opportunity for additional private streets, perhaps to serve that user off of 13th Street, which would be outside the scope of the project plan. So again, just to recap here, it's 13 total parcels, about 140 acres. This district is under statute considered to be mixed use, primarily suitable for industrial sites. It's designated as mixed use in the event that, again, some other types of development might occur along the Ryan Road frontage, though those are a little bit more speculative at this stage. The base value as of 2018 is about $1.5 million, and depending on which scenario we're looking at here, our estimate is that somewhere between $85 and $100 million worth of new development value would be created in this TID area, and depending on the timing of development that we are expecting here or estimating, that could generate over the maximum 20-year life of the tax increment district somewhere between $35 and $43 million. And there is the opportunity to potentially close the district early should things go extremely well and the city is able to finance and pay off its obligations prior to when we're anticipating. So the general types of project costs that are allowed under a tax increment plan could include capital costs, public infrastructure, property assembly and relocation, demolition and site prep costs, certain professional services, planning, engineering, legal for the project plan and for future projects under the project plan, marketing and project concepts, cash grants to developers, again, subject to a negotiated development agreement on a case-by-case basis, and then other prorated costs that may even extend outside the district boundary within a half a mile. So as a quick recap of the specific project costs that are anticipated under this plan, under each scenario, these include a number of roadway improvements, site grading, costs related to business park development. Those that are marked with asterisks may extend slightly beyond the district boundary, but are eligible to be funded. Those in italics are considered contingent costs, so assuming that the amount of tax increment occurs and it otherwise happens in the manner that we're expecting, those could happen, but the city would not be expected to take on debt for those. The primary difference between the two, again, is that the large user would require fewer internal roads and infrastructure, and then we would expect it to build out at a faster pace than the multiple user concept, and therefore there's a smaller assumed amount of finance charges and interest. So that accounts for the about $7 million difference between the two scenarios, but under either one, depending on the amount of increment that is generated, we do anticipate that should be more than enough to pay for the project costs listed here. So just again, a really quick recap of what we're expecting here based on today's base value of a little bit over $1 million and up to $1 million in new value being created, and the opportunity to generate tens of millions of dollars in tax increment that would significantly increase the future tax base for the TID district when it is eventually closed, which would be at a maximum 20 years from now. And at that point, this would be worth nearly $2 million in annual revenue. And with that, I'll turn it over to Bridget to say a little bit more about the specifics of the financial analysis.
Right, bear with me as we get into the financials a little bit and flip-flop between these charts and the two different scenarios. The first chart that we have here is relating to the multiple user. So as Dan mentioned, we are looking with a multiple user at an estimated 85 million of value increment, so development in the district. We would be expecting for that value, 60 million of it to come in within the first few years of the district, and then it would tail through the following years. In all of our projections, we have kept a very conservative inflation factor as well as a flat tax rate. So we're holding some conservative projections throughout. This slide is on the large user, which we are anticipating a potential of 100 million in value increment, with 90 million in the first few years and then the remaining 10 the following 2 years. Shifting into the cash flow analysis of the multiple user. In this slide, you see the potential sources of funds, so the revenue coming in with that tax increment, anticipated investment income, and the potential for debt proceeds. Again, this is just speculation and looking at a projection so that we make sure that all the numbers work out. We may need to go ahead and bond for the infrastructure for the district. That's that listed debt proceeds there. Then the uses of funds shows your capital expenses, so the money going out for the infrastructure, annual administrative costs to the city, potential for development incentives, and then the repayment of that debt service. Showing through this scenario, the district could close the earliest in 2036. Shifting to the large user scenario, again, same story here, looking at the tax increment, investment income, and lesser proceeds because there would be less infrastructure needed for the large user scenario. The capital expenses going out, admin costs, development incentives potentially, and the repayment of that debt service. In the large user scenario, the district could potentially close out early in 2029. These two charts show, again, the multiple user and the large user format and what the overlying taxing jurisdictions are currently getting for their tax base, and then what they would be receiving in the respective scenarios at the closure of the district. So a significant increase in the dollars being distributed.
So there are a number of required statutory findings that do appear in the project plan itself, and I won't spend a ton of time running through each one of these, but these are also included in the resolution that's in front of you tonight for a recommendation of the project plan to the Common Council, should you decide to move forward with that. This does require the but-for finding, that the economic benefits of the TID are sufficient to cover the costs of the improvements shown in the project plan, that the benefits of the proposals within the plan outweigh the tax increments to be paid in the overlying taxing jurisdictions. The improvements are likely to enhance significantly the value of all other real property in the district over time, and that the value of this TID plus all others in the city don't exceed 12% of the overall equalized assessed value of the entire city. We're not anywhere close to that threshold at this point, so that's really not an issue. There are no residential projects that are anticipated under this plan, so it's easy for us to find that less than 35% will be residential. That at least 50% of the area must be found to be suitable for mixed use and/or industrial. All of which are expected under this plan. The city estimates that up to 10% of the district might be retail. Again, the frontage along Ryan Road, but that is definitely a speculative estimate. And the project plan ultimately is economically feasible and in conformity with the comprehensive plan of the city. And there is an amendment pending to the future land use map that will conform to the what is shown under this plan. So this tonight is the Plan Commission public hearing, and should this move forward, it would be considered for adoption by the City Council on August 21st, with final action by the Joint Review Board estimated around Labor Day.
Okay. Thank you for that presentation. Hopefully everybody got a little more information. But this is a public hearing. I will be making 3 calls. We have quite a few speakers that have already put in, so I'll make the first call and call these people up first, and anybody else wishing to speak, please fill a form out. They're located on the wall, on the south wall, and hand it over to Doug or Pete, and they will get it up here. So this is the first call of the public hearing. First up, Dale Richards. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Honor. Honorable Commissioners, My name's Dale Richards. I live at 1320 West Lois Lane. I'm directly across the street from this development. Let me start out by saying that I think this development is appropriate for this site. This goes back to the city's land use plan, going back at least 15 to 20 years, so it's entirely appropriate. The TIF district, certainly again, I believe it's appropriate for some of the reasons Andrew brought up, but clearly it's the issue with trying to consolidate or coordinate the issues with the county lands, and then the crossing of the Oak Creek Channel, which is a biggie. There's too many issues with that. That's not to say it couldn't be done on its own without a TIF, but certainly that would help and make a much better project. But I'm here to turn around and talk to you about my concerns with Vanderwally's project proposal, more or less in alliance with the financing issues. I understand that this proposal, was it 20, 30 pages I got a copy of, is a lot of it's boilerplate. That's not uncommon, okay? But I just would advise you to, everybody's got good intentions to look at the devil of the details in there, because I think they're vague. I think that spending plan is riddled with the potential for fronting the customary and ordinary developer costs that everyone else has to pay for. I'm not saying this developer has no skin in the game, but he shouldn't have his financial risk being reduced below what all other developers are expected to pay. So much for my editorial. In regards to costs, I want to get specific. I'm not asking you to turn around and tell me what's going on there. I'm just raising these concerns that in regards to costs in this written plan, if you adopt what's written in that plan, those things can happen. And I don't think some of them are appropriate. Like the mass grading for the entire park, removal of bad soils, soil restoration. Yeah, I'm sure that the majority of this property's always been ag, so I'm not expecting a big deal, and I'm assuming that they turned around and did a phase 1 on this years ago. But by the old railroad bridge, there's an old bridge that I will talk about later, that has a potential where there was a railroad crossing for some soils. Capital costs. This turns around and says, hey, you can put up new buildings, structures, fixtures, demolition, use sustainable green building features, acquisition of equipment to service the district, constructing new parking facilities, and cash grants. That's a red flag to me, saying that you can guys give out, cash grants. So I think that's too vague. Now, I know this isn't your first rodeo with developments, right, Doug? So I'm going to assume that you guys have already got the data to support the increased traffic on 13th Street and Ryan Road. But I would also like to jump the gun here a little bit by recommending the large parcel, okay? And what I'm suggesting here is that by adopting the large parcel, the use of crossing the bridge is really what's the benefit here. And I'm looking for the benefit of TIF by putting in the bridge is you're eliminating, or you have the potential to eliminate some of the traffic on 13th Street and orientate that right out on the Highway 100, which is where, in my opinion, it should belong. So that's a TIF benefit to not just, the business park, but also to the neighborhood where I'm sure there's a lot of concerns. If that's not the case and you don't want to push the traffic out to Ryan Road and you want it to go on 13th Street, then save your money and don't build the bridge. That development can still happen with the properties on the north side of Ryan, on the north side of the creek, developing and accessing off of Ryan, and those properties to the south. You can just easily put the development to the south in a horseshoe configuration, no different than we did with the TIF with Creekside Business Park right directly to the west of that proposal. Just kind of a sideline tidbits. What I would be doing if it was me, in this particular presentation here, parcels, I think it's 6 and 8. Okay, that's the lumber mill workplace, and then there's a single family home. I think those properties should get bought out as part of this development, so you've got a clean slate, not that there's going to be some eyesores along the lines. If you want this to be a top-notch, a development, let's make it look that way from day one. Also, for what it's worth, you were talking about having that, neighborhood park. My proposal, if you will.
Got to stay on the mic, though, Dale. Remember, you got to be on the mic. So, you can maybe use this one on the table here if it reaches.
Okay, if you can visualize, what is that? The long parcel that's going north and south alongside the railroad tracks. You come down just before the park. I would extend that development all the way to the end of the TIF district, and where you're proposing the park, I would push the park beyond the TIF district proposal and push that to the direct east of English Air subdivision and just to the south of this proposed TIF district. In other words, I would make it more accessible to the neighborhood. Right now, by turning around and putting in that park, it's not really accessible to a neighborhood. I know from a theoretical standpoint, we'd like to have neighborhood parks. You really don't have one south of Ryan Road. This would be a perfect application, but tie it into that subdivision of English Air and then allow that property where you're talking about putting the park, make that a developable property with the property to the north. Okay? Tax increments. Well, let me jump here slightly. There is a minor section where we're talking about that little park, pocket park, and I think there was mention about stones. I would like to bring that to your attention because I know Doug and I have had conversations over this, and I think I see something in Vanderwally's proposal over stones. Well, it's not common knowledge, but if you walk down that Old Creek Channel, back in the woods there is an old railroad bridge that I was talking about before. That bridge has got some beautifully cut stones that are probably 4 feet wide, 30 inches tall, and probably 3 or 4 feet deep, and they're probably 10 feet high. That old bridge, you could pull some of those stones out, put a few around City Hall, or, I would have liked to have seen them down around Bender Park, on the hillside around the boathouse, or say in this pocket park. But salvage some of those stones from the history that was involved with that particular old farm. Certainly you've got different options on how you're going to fund this. Geo debt is not uncommon, but my challenge to you is, the city used to turn around and have a policy of 10-year paybacks on the debt, okay? This is saying 18 at the best. So that's another reason for pursuing the large development versus the multiple developments. And then my last little issue is in page 24 and 25, I think you had shown up before about the tax increment. Maybe I'm reading that particular spreadsheet wrong, but I believe you're off by a year. The tax, from the way I'm reading that last column of the tax increment, you're generating $400,000 worth of revenues from improvements that are going to be made this year. You're not going to get $20 million worth of development in a couple months so that you can turn around and start collecting on taxes on it in January of 2020. So maybe I'm reading that wrong, but I think that spreadsheet is off by a column. So that has an impact on your paybacks. So that's it. Good luck.
Well, thank you. Very interesting ideas. Thank you very much. Next, Yvonne Sierra.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name
and
is
address,
Yvonne
please.
Sierra. I'm at 1500 West Lois Lane, and in fact, I have lived in the 6th district for, goodness, of at least 45 years, within a half-mile radius of this district that is about to be developed. I guess I want to know about a planned unit development and what kind of authority does the city have in guiding traffic on 13th Street? Do you have any ability to dissuade traffic from going south on 13th Street?
Right now, we're really just focusing on the boundaries.
Right, but
So until something comes forward, we don't know what that user is going to be. That's why we have two plans in
right.
place.
And so when is the right time to put in comments on a PUD relating to traffic?
When somebody comes down and says, yes, I want to be here,
Okay.
this is my business type.
So I know Mr. Richards was in favor of a large development because of the economics, and that scares me because what it implies, who could come in there with distribution centers, because that is one of the allowable businesses. And because distribution centers, because they obviously have a lot of traffic, I'm concerned about that, especially with the park on the other side. So I think that that should be taken into consideration when the park is developed and if a large user is allowed to come down 13th Street. Okay, so everybody has their idea of how those units, the lots should be divided up. I am of the opinion that in 2003, when that property was purchased by Capstone, that those residents to the south of that property, they were there. And in 2003 or 4, many of us were here to discuss the zoning at the time, and there's not much we could do because it was purchased and it was in the master plan. But I can tell you right now that I do not think that there is enough buffer for those people living in that subdivision. In fact, it's not an idea of how big the berm can be. I think that it would be very nice if that piece of property was donated to the park, that whole lot or a portion of it running east and west, especially because the developers are receiving a $6 million incentive to put this deal together, and that is up and beyond the money that they will be making in developing that property. So I want you to take that into consideration, possibly working with Capstone to get some
Again,
land.
that would be farther down the
Okay.
road. Right now, we're just
Okay.
working on the boundaries. We're kind of taking it step at a time. We can't speculate who's going to be there or what's going to
Okay.
be there.
Okay, and so the boundaries to the park, as it stands right now, a lot of that is wetland, it appears. And so that is another reason why I wanted the boundaries to be expanded to the west and allow for a bigger park with less wetland. And the park is up against the railroad tracks, which to me, you really don't, you got to keep the kids away from the tracks, so move it towards the west. I may have some more comments, and they won't be given tonight, but I may end up sending them in after hearing what other people say.
You're more than welcome.
Okay, well, thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you for the comments. Appreciate it. Next, Mr. John Belkey.
John Belkey, 8506 South 13th Street. I will keep it under 3 minutes. For a disclaimer, my wife and I have made a commitment to leave the city because of the growth. That's not us. If you're going to grow, but do it safely. We talked about so many stuff. I'd like to ask this gentleman a question, please.
Sure, go ahead.
Administrator? You had said TIF is good for the city, and it comes back to the homeowners like myself, right? When will that happen? Oak Creek has many TIFs out there. When will that actually happen?
As was explained in the presentation, once the tax increment district closes, I think our earliest scenario was 2029 or 2029 and 2020 or 36 respectively.
Right, that one. But there's other TIFs in Oak Creek, correct?
Correct. And
When will that money come back to the
some have
homeowners?
already closed. We've had multiple ones that have already closed. And just for everybody's general knowledge, Oak Creek has never run a TIF to its full life.
Okay, that's
Okay.
fine. But when will that come back to the homeowner to lower their taxes?
It all depends on how quickly the land develops and the money's paid back. As soon as
So
it's,
how many TIFs have we had in the past that's been open and closed?
I will defer that. Six is the
Did
one.
any money ever come back to the homeowners?
It all, yes, it did. It all went back to
Lower
our
our
general
taxes?
fund.
I never saw it of mine. Huge. All right, then, huge, but I never saw it.
And it goes to all taxing agencies. So that's school, municipality, MATC, so on and so
Right.
forth, county. So they all get their cut at the end.
And also, you talked about cash incentive, right? For this thing, how much cash is going to these people?
It's cash isn't going to these people. The cash is built in, as Mr. Richards said. Say them homes decide to do a buyout, and there's a gap to buy out. We can construct that in multiple ways. So when you see cash, don't think we're just handing over bundles of cash. It's not happening. What that does is it gives us flexibility to work within the TIF for what's needed, because it's unforeseen. Things that come up within the TIF. There's multiple things. We want to reuse them stones. Maybe we use some of that TIF money to do that. So that's how it's built in.
And Mayor, if I may, the project plan is a blueprint. It is not, given the fact that something listed as a project cost in the project plan is not a guarantee that it will spend. Each one of those project costs needs to be approved by the Common Council. So even though it's in there, it allows for the greatest amount of flexibility. But unless those project costs are approved by the Common Council for each one of those projects, and it's just again, a blueprint for how this potentially could be developed. So when you see a number in the project plan, and there are some in there that, there's some big price tags attached to them, but keep in mind that the scenarios that we're planning for involve some uncertainty, and that's to allow for the greatest flexibility to make for the best project and the most financially feasible project. The likelihood of the TID and the project costs playing out exactly as it's written in the project plan, probably unlikely. I think that there's always going to be some variation in terms of the projects that the council chooses to actually implement. So again, it's in the project plan, but requires Common Council approval to expend those costs on a per project basis.
Thank you, Doug.
What our charge is in this project plan, Mr. Mayor, is really to include the costs that we think we may encounter. Mrs. Sierra mentioned a $6 million cash incentive to the business park developer. There's no $6 million incentive to the business park developer. If something were to materialize that would need to be incentivized, we would be able to react to that. But what our charge is to include with you in this project plan for those approval bodies, what we might encounter. This is, as what was kind of spoken about earlier. This potential has the potential to be a 10, 15 year, 20 year district if we take it to its statutory life. We don't know what we'll encounter. We wanted to show you that in the worst case scenario, if we were to encounter all of the costs that we think we could face, it's still financially feasible for the district to repay and not the general taxpayers of this community.
Is that it, John?
I guess.
Okay. Next, Lucia Rivas.
Hi, Lucia Rivas, 9759 South 13th Street. My questions have to do with How will this be affecting the houses like mine that are directly across the street on 13th Street? As far as traffic, as far as just everything, it just,
Again, we're focused on the boundaries tonight, and until a particular development comes up, whatever that may be,
and then it's
that's
too late, right?
No, we go through the conditions and restrictions. You know, as it was brought up, if there's buffers needed to English air on the south, that's when we go through the plan. Now, the traffic analysis, to our best of our knowledge, okay, we're going to look into potential users that could use the park in a multiple user scenario and a single.
Right. There's my house and my next door neighbor's house, and then there's Calder's, and that's it. So how would our properties be affected?
At this time, without knowing
Well,
what
no
type
matter
of business,
whether it's a single, use developer or a multi,
each business is
still
very,
gonna be
very
bad either
unique. It
way.
could be a very automated place that has very few employees in it.
right.
You laugh. They're building. I can tell you right now, Miller Brewery, okay, owns Leinenkugels. They built the plant. They run the whole plant with probably less than 25 employees in the whole thing at any one time. It's going on. Automation is coming. So just because the building's big doesn't mean it has a large population. But again, you're speculating, and I don't want to get into that because all we're doing is boundaries. So again, until you know what the business model is, it's hard to project what any traffic will be until somebody comes forward.
Mayor, if I may, I think it's safe to say, and just not to sugarcoat this, the business park in a good geographic location for a business park is at the intersection of 13th and Ryan Road. There's going to be traffic impacts to 13th Street. But just put that out there and be completely transparent. It's how we control that traffic, increased traffic onto 13th Street, and what has to happen to 13th Street to handle that capacity. That's the important question. 13th Street is a county trunk highway. Those are arterial roads that are set up to move traffic. Now, we can control maybe the direction of where that traffic goes and have this be self-contained back out to the Ryan Road interchange based on the specific site planning that the mayor has spoken of when we have a user or multiple users that give us what their traffic impacts are. So,
Okay. Next, Maureen Wilms. Welcome.
Hi, Maureen Wilms, 991 West Leeds Court. I have a few specific concerns about initially why a TID district in this area. The property value alone of this location being looked at, we've already heard Amazon, and those companies are large enough to financially cover infrastructure costs, pay their taxes up front, and not defer all of these to a later date and time so that the city would see a more immediate impact from the tax increases. You talked that the TID would have a fund that would help us offer more control of the development. Does that mean we get a say in who goes in, what it looks like, what the boundaries will look like so that there's buffers between the neighborhoods? What kind of say would we get in if the city is offered more control through the TID?
First of all, as far as the land value goes, you kind of seen the presentation on what it would do to the land value. Regardless of who comes in, the infrastructure is going to have to come in. Okay?
Correct.
Most people, okay, whether it's a multi-million-dollar company like Amazon or a smaller machine shop, they're just not going to foot that. It's too competitive these days. So the incentive is that we put in the infrastructure. The infrastructure is going to benefit us in the end. That's really the point of it. As far as control of it, yes, and it starts right here. And it comes with public input depending on who comes, and as a city administrator said, depending on who comes and how they orientate their building, it can help decide where traffic goes. We can decide on the landscape, the buffers, the fences, things like that here at planning. And then, of course, our ordinances hold it in check too as to what our standards are.
Okay. What if the fund ends up with an excess? What happens with that money?
With the excess,
Yeah.
It pays down early.
Okay.
Excess is a good thing.
So essentially, the TID is being used as a lure for companies to come in.
It's an investment. It's an investment in the city to make it marketable.
Even though that property is, I mean, it should be a bidding war over this property.
With the infrastructure, yes. If it was that valuable, then why didn't somebody snap it up already? Why did it take 15 years to assemble? Because there's challenges. You heard about the Crickway going through there. The bridge is expensive. There's DNR things going on there. It's not an easy thing to assemble, and I don't claim to be the expert at it. That's why we have people and partnerships that do that. But it takes a long time and a lot of money to put it together to get it feasible. But this is what's helping us keep our level of services where they're at and our property taxes stable.
And as in terms of the wetlands where the park is going to be located, and then anything south of that area is more or less like floodplain runoff. I mean, it runs directly behind my house. And so are there going to be any protections for those areas? Because the cranes mate in that area every spring, and so it's a very happening animal place. You know, so it's just, I would hate to see us lose all
I
that.
understand, and really that's part of the appeal of this. Even though it's a business park, the county did want to do that land swap to preserve those lands for those exact reasons you said, because they're very, very conscious of that. The same thing pretty much happened over on 20th and Drexel area, where they bought up they did a land swap and preserve some wetlands there too. They're interested in the wetlands, developers aren't. So it's a pretty good partnership.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Next, Tina Lewis. Oh, I'm sorry. I just grabbed a pile of them and assumed everybody was here for that. All right, we got somebody talking later on. Next, Omar Faruqi. Sorry about that.
Yeah, my family has property at one...
Name and address, please.
Omar Faruqi. My family has property, rental property at 10140 South Warwick Drive. Oh, sorry, South Windsor Drive.
Okay.
And that's in Oak Creek. And what we're wondering is by what percentage will the property taxes go up? For example, I got the total value up on the screen for 20 years between 35 to 42 million. But what does that mean to me as far as individual property taxes going up by what percentage, say, for example, 2018, 2019, 2020?
Okay. This, because of the way it's structured, none of this cost hits your tax bill because it's all being paid for within the TID. So the development's paying down the cost.
So property taxes aren't going up?
Not due to this. Now, I'm not going to make a promise that your taxes aren't ever going up because a lot of things affect that. Assessments, comparables that are being sold. Oak Creek's a hot market, things like that. And we have been in reassessment mode. And I don't want to get into a whole thing with the state with what's going on with shared revenue and our expenditure restraint, but it's a complicated model. So we have to keep our taxes as close to 100% as we can so we can keep up city services as we're growing. So, but theoretically, this project does not affect your property tax.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And then the last one in the first call is Ann McClure.
I'm Ann McClurgan. I live at 10353 South Mockingbird Lane. I have two concerns. One has to do with the property value of my house after you build. We will be surrounded by business parks or industrial parks. Now, we've got property going, we've got the business center going in on Oakwood and Howell, and I am on the southeast corner of Oakwood.
Okay.
And we've got something going on Bryan Road. And we've got PPG behind us, and we've got Air Products, okay? So I have some concerns about my property value. The other thing I have concerns about has to do with the traffic. I live off of Oakwood. I ride my bike there a lot. We have a lot of people who have decided that Oakwood is 50 miles an hour. So those are my two concerns.
And well taken, well taken. Again, we want to do some connectivity to the existing bike trails. We've invested extensively in them. We hope people use them versus the roads. But again, the roads are there. As the roads get reconstructed, they're being more bike friendly. And you're right, we are doing development without a doubt, but
we will have 4 subdivisions that will be surrounded by so-called business parks. So I have a lot of concerns there, and having one bike lane is not enough. Because again, I will say this, is you want to go on Oakwood, walk there, ride your bike, and we've got people going in both directions at least 40, 50 miles an hour.
You're right, and that is unacceptable, but hopefully when they design the roads out, they design them out properly with the width. They don't have to go 50 because they're 2 lanes. There's wider lanes to pass and in the appropriate settings when it comes to that.
Now, in order for me to get to the bike trail, I have to go on Oakwood.
I get it. I get it. But in time, we'll see what develops. But as of right now, this does fit the master plan, and you can always review the master plan and see where it's projected to be. This has always been projected to be developed at one point in time. Just took that long to assemble. Thank you.
At least Oakwood's only 25. 25, right.
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
Okay. I will make the second call. Sure. Come on up, sir. Name and address, please.
I'm the lone survivor on the south side of this project. Lot number 8, Brad Wenka.
You're number 8. Okay.
Yeah, I'm number 8. And I just, yeah.
Oh, I still need your name and address, though. Number 8.
Brad Wenka, 9962 South 13th Street. I'm in the corner of the property there, southwest corner. And I just want to say that when I met Mike quite a few years back already, I've always known that this property is going to be developed, and I've been behind it 100%. Because it's going to happen. Oak Creek is expanding. And I'm not going to be, somebody knocking on the walls and everything else saying that, you know what, I don't want to sell. I don't want to, I don't want to see anything back there or anything else. So I'll give you guys a good note to end on or whatever. So that was it.
Okay. Thank you,
All right.
sir.
Thank you.
Come on up. Name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Amy Lohberger, 10150 Southampton Drive. I just wanted to go on record and echo some of the other concerns that some other people have said and just kind of list them. I'm concerned about my property value going down. I'm also concerned about the number of semi-trucks that this addition will potentially add to our neighborhood, especially 13th Street with the addition of FedEx and the newer business park areas has already been, additional semis and noise pollution and additional, I'm sure, actual pollution going on there. So I'm not a big fan of that. It would be great if we had more of a buffer between us, the English Air subdivision, and whatever does go in there. I think that would make me feel 100 million times better. But definitely we're going to have to do something about 13th Street. It kind of already is a death trap at 13th and Ryan, in and out of Quick Trip especially, and Wendy's. I mean, every day you drive through there and somebody's almost getting, just an accident almost every single day. So it's pretty nasty. But yeah, property values especially is my main concern. So just wanted to go on record. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Third and final call. Anybody wishing to speak, please approach the podium, name and address.
Brian Gallett, 1090 West Dover Drive. My backyard actually abuts lot number 7 there. Big concern, like they said, since this is about borders and everything, is there anything you can put into the project that would ensure borders before the borders are made? to add extra buffer to
Well-
whatever your setbacks are already.
Well, we do have setbacks, and then depending on when a particular development comes in, we can look at that. And of course, if you're within 300 feet of the project, you'll get notice, and that's when we take it up here with conditions and restrictions.
Right, just seeing if there's anything you can do in between that for extra, like everyone's saying. With
Not here tonight.
Okay.
But again, we want to be as least impactful, and we really want to be complimentary to the neighborhood as best we can when a business park's coming in, to the best of our ability.
Okay. Because speaking for a lot of my neighbors too, I mean, just like was already said, obviously traffic, blah, blah, blah. But noise during the build, dust blowing through our backyards, I mean, quite a big project, quite a undertaking here.
Yeah,
so,
and as Mr. Richards said, it's kind of not our first road. We've kind of dealt with that in other neighborhoods too, where we've had large developments go in, and we do try to protect the neighborhood as best we can, and police our contractors as best we can. I know it's not always to everybody's satisfaction, but we're trying.
Okay, cool. We just appreciate consideration, being residents OC and big supporters, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Last chance on third and final call. If not, come on up. Wait, you gotta be on the microphone.
Angie Markwald, live at 10047 Southampton in the English Air subdivision. Looking at page 27 of draft date June 28th, someone else had referenced cash flow, so hopefully I'm looking at this right. But there's a column for TID balance, so the money we're all going to make, which is great. It accumulates over time, adds up to 6.2 million and some change. Looking at a different page, roughly in the contingencies, so not guaranteed, $350,000 for the neighborhood park investments, and $260,000 for trail connections. So I'm just curious how the cash flows, incoming, and the expenditures might work. If the cash all needs to be there before we can start investments in the park, in which case we're looking at 2023, 24 maybe, before we residents might see something there, or if we might start building on that a little bit early, and as all of this fun dust and things are going on, we might at least get some extra use out of that spot as residents.
I'm going to turn it over to my city administrator, but one good example of a similar scenario is Emerald Row Park we have here. The park's in and we're still in a TIF, so we didn't wait for it. But go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt that the county is going to let us wait until 2023 to make good on our part of the cooperative agreement that we've reached on this land exchange. We do fully intend to construct that in the first couple, after a public process. So I don't want to say first couple years, but that's our time frame. I think the trail connections are going to come a little bit later on. Those are not as far along in discussions and where we might connect them and those types of things. But our goal would be to construct this neighborhood park as soon as possible in the district. There are other financial strategies we can kind of employ to not rely on tax increment financing for that. So we don't have to wait necessarily for that to catch up.
So just to clarify on that, is there any chance that the neighborhood park or trails would come out of the contingency classification into the, I can't remember exact wordage, but the required bucket based on what you're saying, or will it remain a contingency and we kind of hope for the best here?
Maybe a bit of a misnomer on contingency. Contingency kind of lends to if X, Y, and Z occur, maybe we'll get a park. We, as part of our agreement with the county, we do have to construct the park. So, I wouldn't put too much stock in those being identified as contingency items when cash accrues, because our goal is to, like I said, we have park impact fees and other sources of funds that we can use to start that park soon, and that's our goal.
Very much.
You're welcome. We had one more speaker in the back. Welcome. Name and address, please.
My name's Rachel Martinez de la Catera. I live at 10149 South 13th Street.
Hey, can you pull the mic down a little bit? Make sure you're on there.
Do I need to repeat that?
There you go.
Okay. Okay, so just for the next following steps, so all of us should be here again on August 21st, and then we're going to discuss something else, and then September, what's the next steps?
August, what you see tonight,
Mhm.
okay, once, if this body decides to approve it, it will move on as it's approved here to the Common Council. Then your Common Council and all the district aldermen will get a look at it, and then they'll approve it. But nothing should change from what we approve here to there.
Okay, so then are we all going to get a letter again when you're starting to talk about boundaries and all this fun landscaping?
Anytime this project moves through, our ordinance reads 300 feet, Doug, within the boundary.
Yeah, and let me maybe clarify a few things. I mean, this is a public hearing, and based on this public hearing, this will go to the joint review board. And that was, if you recall the slide that talked about who comprises the joint review board, that they are representing each of their taxing jurisdictions. While you are able to, certainly it's a public meeting, and we will notice that accordingly, it's not the same setting as the Common Council per se. You're welcome to attend, but there's someone from the county, there's someone from MATC, someone from the school district.
All the taxing agencies that get money from the TIF are part of that board.
It is our process will likely include, when this comes back for, we're talking about the site plans for whoever builds it. I mean, we, by our own rules, not any state statute, we go out and notify people within 300 feet. In many cases, and in fact, in this case, by each of the aldermen's requests, Alderman Guzikowski, Alderman Gale, they asked us to go well beyond that to include the entire English Air subdivision. I think we even did the entire Armand Heights subdivision and some of the properties in Oakwood Terrace as well. So, we are extending that. I suspect that we will use those same mailing labels to notify people whenever there is a site plan for an individual user in the park.
Okay.
So I guess that's the answer, but yes, if you look up there on the 21st, it will go to the city council and then the review board on September 4th,
I think.
So either way, as something progresses though, the aldermen have requested it to go farther. We are very transparent in what we're trying to do.
Okay.
Trying to throw a curveball by anybody, by any means. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Maureen Wilms again, 991 West Leeds Court. Just a quick question. When the FedEx Freight Depot went in, who paid for the infrastructure costs for that?
For the infrastructure costs? FedEx.
FedEx
and,
covered
yes.
that. And did they not buy up the TIF for that location so that it would bring it to full?
No, what they did is they fell within the TIF district, so they added value to it, which will help pay it off and make it financially feasible sooner.
Okay, so their property, which is not as good a location, was good enough for them to pay for the infrastructure cost. But this one, which I would feel would be more valuable, we're worried about a company paying infrastructure
Well,
costs.
two different scenarios there. You had a dedicated user that had purchased property, and again, we had a TIF scenario there, a traffic analysis, which will be done here. We don't have anybody to negotiate at this time, so we're investing in the infrastructure to attract development is what we're doing. Here, the TIF was already in place.
And just to clarify too, with the Opus Drive was already in place.
Yes.
For that FedEx.
It was just improvements.
Order of magnitude, they needed to improve that. Brian, call it $500,000. Yes. And we're looking at, $11.5 million. So there's pretty different.
Good point. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. I will now close the public hearing. Anybody else? And no takers. Okay. We're going to close the public hearing and go to item 6A. And that is consideration and review by the Plan Commission on Resolution 2018-06, adopting the boundaries in the project plan for the tax increment financing district number 16. I'll open it up to the council, the commission, for questions and comments. Forgot what week I'm in. Anybody? Christina?
Yes, actually, I do have a question / comments, and I think we already heard it quite a bit from everybody here, is the impact of traffic on 13th Street. And I do know it is a county road for sure, but there should be by now, even if we don't know what kind of business is coming in, there should be some sort of projection to see the impact on that road. Definitely the impact will increase the volume of traffic somehow, some way or the other. And that will impact the number of lanes and therefore the impact of right-of-way. So that should have been done regardless of what type of business coming in.
Yeah.
Has this been done?
Traffic impact analysis, and Commissioner Johnson may be able to give a little more light on, shed a little more light on that. Expect that to be back probably mid-August at the latest, and then I don't know what process it would undertake to take. If there's any other looks or any other agencies need to look at that. But I know the DOT, the developer, the county, and the city have been involved in the creation of that, data inputs into that TIA, and we expect that back, perhaps a month from now.
Brian, anything?
No, I don't.
Dawn? Chris?
Just a few things. First of all, just anyone that's here from the 6th District, thank you for coming out tonight and listening in to see what everyone has to say and hear how all of our city staffs and our city partners are working hard to bring as much valuable information as they can. So I just want to start there. So as we started on this project, I'm still really kind of on the fence on this right now. And my biggest reason within the two projects, I support the larger use project first. And I only support that if we bring all of the truck traffic out on to Ryan Road and not on the 13th Street. So that's kind of where I stand right now with the traffic things. I know we're talking borders right now, but I just wanted to point that out. In regards to the property owners outside of the TIF, I wanted to, one is here, so he already spoke, so he's good with property 8, but also Empire Millwork, have they been contacted?
Yeah, the developer has worked probably for many years in cultivating a relationship with those property owners, and recently has communicated and reached out several times and touched base with the millwork.
I just wanted to be on record that the attempt's been made.
We would appreciate the goals that Dale had expressed as well. We would appreciate getting that those developments out of the way.
Well, the other part of the equation
in a nice way
is keeping those properties there, and along with the English Air subdivision, we need to make sure as we're planning, as development does happen, that the berming is such that it's attractive, but it's also beneficial for the neighbors, because they're living there and they want to stay living there. But really, as I opened, traffic is really my big, as everyone has brought up tonight, traffic is my big taboo right now. It's 13th Street, so that's the biggest issue with truck traffic, semis going down 13th Street. That's where I have the hardship right now. When we look at some of the charts and graphs, and in the large, if we go back to the small user, the multiple user, one way of potentially saving costs is, and I think Dale Richards maybe mentioned it earlier, is not having a through street and avoiding going over the creek, in which you could maybe save money by turning that road around and bringing it back through this. I don't know if that would save costs at all if we ever ended up with the multiple user option, but again, I'm hoping for the large user option to begin with, and hope that the traffic somehow can be mitigated to the best of all of the residents' abilities here.
Okay, great. I'll just put my 2 cents in. I know, we're just doing the boundaries, but yes, we realize there's going to be traffic impacts here. The complexion of 13th and Ryan is going to change, and we want to minimize that. We want to plan it out to the best of our ability. And once we do know what type's going in there, whether it's multi-user or a single user or whatever it turns out to be, we'll take the appropriate steps to try to manage that and be as least impactful to the area residents as possible. I think one of the residents said it, we are in growth mode, and we're trying to be very proactive to make sure we have an inventory of what the markets are looking for, because we're tasked with keeping services in the city running, and things have changed. Mr. Richards got up here and, and said 10 years ago, this is how it used to be, or 15 years ago, whenever it was. It's a whole new ballgame financially within the state and the structure of what we deal with and in the development world. So, we're trying to do what we can to keep those services that you've been accustomed to in the tax base and the schools you're associated, you send your kids to, at the levels you're accustomed to. So this isn't, just vacant land. Let's develop it. This was years, and there is a master plan. And kudos to councils that came before us, because they laid out these plans and looked at the city and said one day things are going to change. We're very fortunate to be in the position we are when it comes to this kind of stuff. So that's all I really have to say. If nothing else, motion, please.
Johnson moves that the Plan Commission adopts resolution number 2018-06, approving the project plan and boundaries for the tax incremental finance district number 16.
Hannah seconds.
Roll call.
Hannah, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Kowski, aye.
Okay. Our next public hearing is item 5B. And Pete, are you taking that one?
All right, this is a public hearing for a proposed sign appeal for the property at 7700 South IKEA Way, submitted by Walden OC LLC for a temporary development sign. I'll read the public hearing notice into the record, however.
Wait for a second.
Oh.
Pete, you just clear the room out.
I did. I tell you, I feel a little hurt. I don't want to listen to my report.
For C. IKEA Way? Yeah, gotcha. Okay. All set, Chris? All right. You're okay. Ready, Pete?
Okay.
All right, as I mentioned before, that this is a public hearing for proposed sign appeal for the property at 7700 South IKEA Way, submitted by Walden OC LLC. That would allow installation of one temporary development sign that would be 128 square feet in area and be located at 7700 South IKEA Way. This is a public hearing. I'll read the public hearing notice into the record, and then I will follow with the next procedure. So, with that said, City of Oak Creek, notice a public hearing before the Plan Commission. A public hearing for a sign appeal will be held Tuesday, July 24th, 2018 at 6 p.m. at the Oak Creek City Hall Common Council Chambers, 8040 South 6th Street, Oak Creek, Wisconsin, 53154. The appellant is Walden OC, LLC. Tax key number 784-9024-000. Property is located at 7700 South IKEA Way. Applicants requesting a variance from section 17.0705B, which states temporary development signs for the purpose of designating a new building or development may be for a limited period of time, provided that the sign shall not exceed 48 square feet in area on one side or 96 square feet on all sides, and not be located closer than 10 feet from any street, right-of-way, or side or rear lot line. The Plan Commission shall specify the period of time the sign may be remain based on the size of the development, provided that the sign shall not be placed for more than 2 years. If granted, the variance would allow the applicant to install one temporary development sign that is 128 square feet in area and be displayed until the property is sold or under construction. Zoning of the property is B6 Interchange Regional Retail District. All interested persons wishing to be heard are invited to be present. Dated this third day of July 2018. Plan Commission, City of Oak Creek, Wisconsin. Signed Mayor Daniel J. Bukowicz, Chairman. The applicant has requested to withdraw their variance request at this time. They want to make some modifications and bring this back before the Plan Commission at a future date. So therefore, this public hearing will not be taking any public testimony, and we'll close this, and then we'll have a motion to.
We do not need, I was informed we do not need a motion.
No, you're right. You don't need a motion because it is withdrawn.
We just,
am I correct?
They will reschedule the date with our city planner.
Yes, it'll be rescheduled at a future time.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Pete. That gets us to item 6C, and that's plan review for site plan submitted by Kevin Kennedy, Walden OC LLC for access approval to 7700 South Kia Way in 1816 West Drexel Avenue. This one for me, Carrie.
The proposal is to obtain access approval from the Plan Commission from 1816 West Drexel Avenue and from 7700 South IKEA Way. You'll recall that there was a CSM to combine all of those properties that was approved by the Common Council in November of last year. Before you is the plan that shows the access. On IKEA Way, there will be a full roadway access with signalized intersection and sidewalks. And the proposed access off of Drexel Avenue would be a private 22-foot wide right-in entrance with sidewalk. Now, typically, and no other development other than mass site grading and utility installation underground would be proposed at this time. Typically, access approval comes through site plan approval for an entire development. But what's unique here is that we're looking at mass grading for the site as well as utility installation. And this is a request that's related to site prep work, and that's all that we're looking at right now. Detailed plans are currently being prepared. So this is in advance of presenting those detailed plans for the Plan Commission, but because we have permanent accesses that are being requested at this time, it does require Plan Commission approval, and this would be a mixed-use development in the future. So with that in mind, if the Plan Commission is satisfied with the information presented and with the two locations of the access points, there is a suggested motion that the Plan Commission approves the site access plan submitted by Kevin Kennedy, Walden OC LLC, for the properties at 7700 South IKEA Way and 1816 West Drexel Avenue. Now, there are two conditions that were included in your packets. I do need to clarify condition number 2. There was a bit of a carryover from a different staff report. So the conditions 1 through 3, number 2 would be revised to say that the CSM approved by the Common Council November 21st, 2017 is submitted for recording prior to submission of applications for Plan Commission review. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Would the applicant like to say anything at this point? Nothing yet? Okay. We do have one citizen asking to speak on it. Mr. Schmidt, come on up.
Mr. Schmidt, 7842 South 13th Street. I own the property right adjacent to where they want to put that road in. So has anybody physically gone over there on the off-ramp and seen where that road's going to go? Did anybody physically have gone there? You have. Yes. I thought maybe the other 4 guys that aren't here, they might be over looking at it right now. But the off-ramp, if you look at it, when you make it, it's like a 45. You're coming around over there, and that right turn is going to be really close. So you got people coming across the expressway doing probably 40 miles an hour, and it's only a 2-lane right now, so it's straight. It's not. There's no right-hand turns at all. So you got this guy coming. He wants to make this right-hand turn, and all of a sudden he says, "It's there." So he slams on his brakes and he gets rear-ended about 5 cars behind him over there. So I want to know if engineering part of it, have they really looked at this area to see that coming off this off-ramp, that this road is really close. I mean, when you make that 45 on there, by the time you straighten out, that road's going to be there to the right. And it's just like, it's not as bad as 13th and Rawson, that business place right over there, that's right right by the intersection on the northwest corner. You see that one there? Yeah. So what I'm saying is, has anybody really, well, okay, maybe it's wide open right now, but I think somebody should check that, I don't know what the zoning, what it is, for that turn off, the exit, to make this right-hand turn too close. And I think you'd have to make another lane to come right into it, because there's going to be all kinds of accidents coming up, because people are really ripping over that expressway. And to make that right-hand turn is going to be very close.
Thank you. Okay. Brian?
We have looked at that. We have met with the DOT on that as well. And the traffic impact analysis addressed this issue when we looked through all that. So the traffic engineers looked at it, DOT's looked at it, cities looked at it. We have covered that. Okay. Is it tight? Yes, it is tight coming around there. The way it functions coming around that corner, because of the Excel lane that comes off the freeway ramp,
right,
that kind of serves as that merging lane with the traffic, the two lanes of traffic through there. Once you get through there, then you get a right turn lane that's going to be out of the traffic for this access.
So there will be, when you have that south, you're going west, you're coming west over there.
Yep.
It's 2 lanes right now, straight, but then it's going to be like a right-hand turn lane all the way.
Not all the way. So you'll merge into traffic first, into the 2 lanes that are flowing west.
Yeah.
Then you'll get back out into a right turn lane to make this maneuver to that driveway.
Small bump out.
Oh, so that's a lot of stuff going on in that short span right there.
Mhm.
And that's all been okayed, it's going to work in that?
Yes. All the models say it's going to work.
It's going to work. Okay. Well, if it works, it works, but I just don't want to be somebody sneak this in, because what's going on in that area anyway, a lot of stuff sneaks in.
Okay. Anyone else? Christina, anything?
No.
No? Dawn? Chris?
No, Brian actually answered the questions I was going to ask.
Okay. If nothing further, motion on C, please.
Johnson moves that the Plan Commission approves the site access plan submitted by Kevin Kennedy, Walden OC LLC for the properties at 7700 South IKEA Way and 1816 West Drexel Avenue with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. 2, that the CSM approved by the Common Council November 21st, 2017 is submitted for recording prior or concurrently with submission of the CSM for recording.
Nope. Let me help you out with that.
Did I miss that part?
Prior to submission of applications for Plan Commission.
I concur. And 3, that all revised plans, site, building, landscape, etc., are submitted in digital format for review and approval by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of building permit applications.
Hannah seconds.
Roll call.
Hannah, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzikowski.
Okay, that gets us to 6D. Review conditions and restrictions for a request submitted by Michael Faber, Ryan Business Park LLC for a planned unit development on the properties at 9600, 9700, 9900 South 13th, and 741 and 1001 West Ryan Road. Carrie?
Plan commissioners will recall that this proposed rezone and planned unit development was recommended for Common Council approval at the Plan Commission's July 10th meeting. So we are here tonight to discuss the conditions and restrictions for that PUD. If you will turn to page 2 of 8, you will notice that the highlighted section under 2A states that all requirements of the City of Oak Creek Municipal Code as amended are in effect. That is just another reminder to everyone that just because it's not stated specifically in these conditions and restrictions, we still apply code. If you turn to page 3 of 8, you'll see a lot of highlighting. Section G states that all future land divisions shall follow subdivision plat and our certified survey map procedures. And it also requires, if the Common Council so desires, a development agreement between the owner and the city prior to approval of any land division, and construction of public improvements would be included in the conditions and restrictions. That's just putting everybody on notice of what is expected. H, even though it is not highlighted, states that for every stage of development, landscaping plans that include such items as trees, shrubs, buffering, any kind of statuary, art forms, water fountains, retaining walls, etc., would have to be submitted to the Plan Commission for review and approval. And it also requires that landscaping in accordance with an approved plan would be installed for each phase prior to occupancy permits being issued for that phase. If you turn to site and use restrictions, this is specific to this PUD, so there's a lot going on here I want to go through with you. This is based on the request submitted by the applicant. So a minimum of 30% of the entire land area included in this planned unit development shall be set aside as green and open space, that is excluding all impervious areas. This is a little bit different than how we would treat a different development. This is 30% covering the planned unit development. No building, principal building or parts of a principal building shall exceed 90 feet in height. This is a specific request for this PUD, except that such height shall be limited to 55 feet if any part of the principal building is within 600 feet of a residential zoning district line. C, the sum total of the floor area on all floors of the principal building and all accessory buildings shall not exceed 90% of the lot area, except that if such principal building is within 600 feet of a residential zoning district line, such sum total shall not exceed 80% of the lot area. 80% is our normal limitation. D, operations within the PUD and in conformance with the conditions and restrictions are allowed 24 hours a day, 7 days per week. E is specific to the request received from the applicant. The following uses are prohibited within the planned unit development: adult entertainment as defined by municipal code, and truck parking lots for third-party trucks unrelated to a permitted or conditional use. Trucks related to a principal or conditional use would still be allowed. F, in addition to the items listed as permitted uses in the M1 manufacturing district, the following uses are allowed in this PUD: distribution centers as permitted uses, storage of goods within an approved and permitted building for future retail sale, offices and training facilities, training for permitted uses, semi-truck and trailer parking as accessory to a permitted use as approved by the Plan Commission, retail sales to the general public of products produced on the premises or products related thereto, accessory to and located within the same building as the permitted use, provided the square footage of the retail space does not exceed 2% of the square footage of the building. Retail sales to employees, excluding the general public, of products provided by tenants or vendors, accessory to and located within the same building as the permitted use. Such uses include, but are not limited to, cafeterias, delicatessens, bistros, restaurants. These two items are separated purposefully. One is to identify those areas where retail sales may occur, and therefore the public would be invited in. And the second one is specifically for if there would be a vendor sale to an employee. For instance, should there be a coffee shop located within the building, they would be allowed to provide that vendor service to the employees only. We're not inviting the public into these areas. That's the split. That's why there is a limitation on one and not the other. Finally, signage for the development shall be in conformance with sections of code, and a master sign plan for the development is required to be reviewed and approved by the Plan Commission. Under 4, parking and access, we're requiring a traffic impact analysis, as has been previously stated. Required roadway improvements and modifications identified in the TIA shall be the responsibility of the property owner. Setbacks shall be in conformance with the following: parking for principal buildings that are less than 600 feet to a residential zoning district line, and those that are in excess of 600 feet to a residential zoning district line have different setbacks per the request by the applicant. So 25 feet for those that are less than 600 and 5 for those that are in excess of 600 feet. Drive aisles would not have a front and street setback, although they would have a rear and side setback of 5 feet. As always, buffer yards are going to be looked at specifically for the individual uses, so we would be looking at buffer yards for parking and driveways at the time of site plan approval. We've got D and E related to access management, stating that access to West Ryan Road is the jurisdiction of WSDOT, and all those approvals would have to be provided to the city. And access to 13th Street is the purview of Milwaukee County, and again, those approvals would have to be provided to the city. 6 specifies building setbacks for principal and accessory structures, 30 feet and 20 feet for rear and side setbacks. 30 feet is a slight reduction by 10 feet from what's in the code. And finally, number 7, time of compliance is our standard. Required to obtain a building permit to begin construction within 12 months of the date of adoption of the ordinance, so the date of the council adoption of these conditions and restrictions. If by chance there is not a building permit that has been issued for the first component of the PUD, then they would have to come back and ask for an extension. With that, if the Plan Commission is satisfied with these conditions and restrictions, there is a suggested motion that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council adopts the conditions and restrictions as part of the manufacturing plan unit development for the properties at 741 and 1001 West Ryan Road and 9600, 9700, and 9900 South 13th Street after a public hearing. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Mr. Faber, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Mike Faber, Capstone Quadrangle. We're the developer of the park, Ryan Business Park. Staff's summary of all of the conditions and restrictions meets with everything that we had requested. The only clarification I would add, which I did discuss with Carrie, was item 2B, that it states a precise detailed site plan for the area affected by the planned unit development, and Carrie was kind enough to clarify for me that that is per parcel as we come forward for development of individual buildings. However, the general development plans, which you've already seen, remains in place. So all the rest of the detailed landscape plan, building plan, lighting plan, and so forth would be per parcel. I'm happy to answer any other questions about any of the conditions and restrictions that you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Faber? Chris?
I do not.
Christina? Brian? Dawn? No? Well done, staff. No, I don't see any. No questions? Motion, please.
Johnston moves that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council adopts the conditions and restrictions as part of the manufacturing plan unit development for the properties at 741 Portion and 1001 West Ryan Road and 9600, 9700, and 9900 South 13th Street after a public hearing.
Hannah seconds.
Roll call.
Hannah, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Kuzikowski, aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 6E, we are going to review conditions and restrictions for a conditional use permit submitted by Brian Schobler.
Shane Lieber.
Boy, I just kill that name, Shane Lieber. For a community-based residential facility on a property at 7801 South Pennsylvania. My apologies to him. That's terrible of me.
Password changed on me since the start of the meeting, so I need to enter a new password.
I can give you one.
There we go. All right. If you recall, back at July 10th Plan Commission meeting, the Plan Commission recommended approval to the Common Council of a proposed conditional use permit for a community-based residential facility with a capacity of more than 8 persons located at 7801 South Pennsylvania Avenue. The Commission directed staff to draft proposed conditions and restrictions as part of the conditional use permit. It's included in your report. Unlike the previous conditions and restriction, this one isn't as yellow as the previous one. This is definitely a less complicated conditional use permit as the previous one that was presented. I just want to point out in here that the conditional use is for CBRF with a capacity of at least 9, but no more than 20 persons. On page 204, section F talks about all plants should be in conformance with the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, establishing regulations and standards for the care, treatment, and services for residents of a CBRF. And then on page 3 of 4, under section 6, permitted uses, is identified as one community-based residential facility of at least 9, but no more than 20 persons are permitted as part of this conditional use permit. The rest of the sections are typical time of compliance, other regulations, violations, and penalties. This is similar to what was proposed the last time the applicant came before the Plan Commission and Common Council for a conditional use permit. The applicant did inform me he was unable to attend tonight. He had a prior commitment that was already scheduled, and so he isn't here tonight to answer any questions, but if you do have any, I shall try my best to answer them. With that said, staff has a suggested motion that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council adopts the conditions and restrictions as part of the conditional use permit, allowing a community-based residential facility with a capacity of at least 9, but no more than 20 persons located at 7801 South Pennsylvania Avenue after a public hearing.
Thank you, Pete. Questions?
Nope.
Nobody? I guess I'd like to hear from Mike from the fire department, as long as he sat through all the hard stuff. But again, it is a residential treatment facility, so fire always plays a big role in this, particularly with given location.
So specifically, Mike Kresick, Fire Department, specifically, is there...
Access to it, like, I'm going to get into parking a little bit, because he has a facility on Willow, and we've received lots of complaints, and I know this is a separate thing, but we were assured that parking was going to take place in lots and what have you, and the road access jams up in there, and you guys would have a tough time accessing anybody past Willow sometimes when they bottleneck.
Absolutely, and we often talk about site access for most of the projects that come through the Plan Commission. Our experience with CBRFs generally are limited in nature. You are looking at, depending on the cycle of the type of people that are at that residence, a call per bed maybe every couple months. Now, the access, we will work closely with the developer to make sure that we have conditions in place with them that specify where our ambulances would normally pull up, where they would park, and what should be maintained as a clear space to allow for that access. Now, historically, we've had very good luck with access at these facilities. Generally, there are open spaces for us. We're able to get our apparatus there as necessary. I would anticipate that working with the owner of the building, we should be able to maintain that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Again, when he came in here before, I kind of went at him on the parking we experienced with his last facility, and I'd really like to hold his feet to the fire on that, to clean up the parking situation at these. And of course, going forward, I know it says, park in the garage or the driveway, but that's not always happening. And I know once they're in, we're very limited within our municipal code to correct that, because they do have the right to park on the streets.
Mr. Mayor, I just, on that quick note, I know we're off topic already, but the last 2 weeks I've gone by there, and I have seen more times than not, they're parked on the street. And you just talked to them at the last meeting, so just in case you were in contact with them.
I know, and they legally can do it, but again, from a business standpoint, he said he was going to honor it and use the garage, and I've been by there when the garage is wide open, and the garage is used for everything but parking. So I'd really like to see a little more teeth to the parking restriction.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have another question regardless of the parking issue. Is this impact of wetland has been coordinated with the DNR?
As for the site plan, they have provided a concept footprint of where the building is, and they have gotten communications from the DNR. As long as they stay out of the wetland, they're fine. Yes, they have 2 feet. They have a 2-foot. Yes.
I see the hash over the wetland.
Yeah.
So how are they staying away from the wetland?
They convinced the DNR that they're going to put up an erosion fence as well as a secondary fence where the wetland is delineated to ensure that there is no construction equipment that will go there, but that is part of building permit application. And so when they get their building permit and when the inspectors go out there and they see that, he has to be able to prove that we're doing it. Otherwise, the city will basically call the DNR on him, and he's going to have to do a lot of explaining to the DNR regarding that. Yeah, we have at length explained our concerns about the size of building that he's proposing, but he hasn't submitted official plans, so maybe the building may be smaller to accommodate the setback better. But at this point, what he's proposing is going to be 2 foot away from the wetland. It's going to be an engineering,
Nightmare.
Yeah, Brian, you brought this up the first time around on it. But then it was only a corner on the wetlands. It was within a few feet.
Just a corner, but there's only 2 feet, so there's no way to access the backside of this building. You have 2 feet on one side, 4 feet on the other side, so I haven't seen very much construction equipment that's less than 4 feet wide, so I'm not sure how they're going to get that in there.
From constructability standpoint, that's not going to fly.
But that's a building permit issue and not a
conditional use
issue. Just want to point out too, Mayor, with the parking here, this is on Pennsylvania.
I know. That'll deter a lot of it.
That'll deter a lot of parking.
I know.
Somebody sitting out there.
I guess I'm trying to, it's wrong. I'm trying to solve a problem in one place on another.
And I don't know if that's an access issue for fire, if they don't have a turnaround or something on their site to be able to stop on Pennsylvania to get to the building, which is feasible. People can get around you.
We're kind of balancing the two circumstances now. In Willow, it's certainly the street parking's beneficial to us, fire department response-wise in some cases, to allow us access through that drive. Absolutely. Pennsylvania, there is no street parking. Parking will have to occur in that driveway, which will also be our main point of access. Street access to those buildings off Penn is very difficult for us, even under the best conditions. So as part of that site plan review process, we'll ensure that we have adequate coverage for our access to that site.
Okay, thank you. But again, we're on conditions and restrictions, so we'll get another shot at that one. So, any other questions? No, if not, motion.
Guzekowski makes a motion that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council adopt the conditions and restrictions as part of a conditional use permit allowing a community-based residential facility, CBRF, with capacity of at least 9, but not more than 20 persons, located at 7801 South Pennsylvania Avenue after a public hearing.
Grillo, second.
Roll call.
Anna, aye.
Johnson, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Item 6F is review of a proposed sign plan submitted by Tina Lewis of Lemberg Electric on behalf of Verizon for the Verizon commercial tenant portion of the building at 120 West Town Square Way. Pete.
All right, thank you. It's been a while, but we have another tenant who is looking to have a sign plan within Drexel Town Square. As you're familiar with the regulations in the report I included, you're allowed to have one primary sign per entry facade. You're allowed to have 1 or 2 flag signs per entry facade, 1 eye-level sign for every 12 linear feet of entry facade, and that maximum height of any primary sign should be no more than 15% of the retail floor height, and as well as the tenants do have additional signage for a wall sign on a street that's facing Drexel or Howell Avenue. The applicant is Verizon. They are looking to put up multiple wall signs. The size of the wall signs are in compliance with code. If you recall, when the master sign plan for this development was approved, it was allowed to have a wall sign on every entry facade, as well as having one on a special facade, which is along Howell Avenue. And that is why this particular tenant space has a wall sign essentially in every elevation. In addition to the wall signs, there are going to be a sign on the monument sign, which was approved as part of the site plan. It also meets compliance as the monument sign was approved earlier as part of the site plan review. Lastly, there are going to be eye-level signs. Eye-level signs are on the entrance door facing the west side. You can see they have the hours of operation and some warning signs that are there. They have enough frontage to allow this number of entry signs, eye-level signs. So at this point, the applicant is compliant with the Drexel Town Square zoning district sign regulations, as well as the master sign plan that was approved earlier this year. With that said, staff has a suggested motion that the Plan Commission approve the sign plan for Suite 100 located at 120 West Town Square Way.
Right, thank you. We do have one speaker, Ms. Lewis. Finally got you on the right item.
Tina Lewis, 4085 North 128th Street, here representing Verizon from Lemberg Electric. Just if you have any questions on the external sign plan.
Questions from Ms. Lewis? No? Anybody?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. No questions? Motion.
Guzikowski will make a motion that the Plan Commission approve the sign plan for Suite 100 located at 120 West Town Square Way.
Johnston seconds.
Roll call.
Anna, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Bill, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Item 6G is a plan review. Review site and building plan submitted by Christine Fisher for an accessory structure on the property at 10991 South 10th Avenue.
All right, that is me as well. The applicant, let me get my report out. The applicant is requesting a third accessory structure on their residential property that also has quite a few zonings on it. It has single-family residential, equestrian residential, and floodway. And in the zoning districts where you have large acreage of land, you're even small, you're allowed to have 2 accessory structures. They already have 2 existing accessory structures. However, they would like a third one. They do have equestrian residential. They do have horses on site, and they are looking to have a third accessory building to help maintain their horses and as well as their property. However, the code says that any time if you want to go over 2 accessory structures, you need to have Plan Commission approval for any property that is large as what is here today. So on the location map, or we have proposed here in the white rectangle is where they're proposing to install a accessory structure, which would be 20 feet away from the house. It won't exceed 17 feet in height, and essentially it does comply with all accessory structure building codes. There is no architectural standards for residential districts, unlike when we have commercial or manufacturing where we have so much brick, glass, or masonry material. However, the Plan Commission does take a look at a case-by-case situation of whether or not that having a third additional accessory structure is a reasonable request for this zoning district. With that said, staff has looked at the neighboring properties as well as the conditions of the size and the location, and therefore, with that said, staff recommends that the Plan Commission approve the site plan for the third accessory structure for the property at 10991 South 10th Avenue, subject to all codes being met. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Pete. Questions from the commission?
I was going to have one question, but I think Pete already addressed it. There was no impact on neighbors or anything like that. You already looked into that, right?
Right. The setback for this would be no different than if they were to put a garage up. And if you look at the location, on the location map, there is the house to the north and as well to the south. And to the west, there is nobody. It's all floodplain. So the visual impact to the neighbors is minimal.
Actually, the applicant submitted a letter. Not only are the neighbors okay with it, they're offering to help do the work. That's really cool. So you don't get that all the time.
Yes. No. Other questions.
Dawn, anything?
No.
Brian?
I'm okay with the structure itself. It's just the building materials. It's a metal building that's in an RS3 zoning area that concerns me.
Chris?
I don't have any questions.
Yeah, I get it. It could be more attractive, but I guess I'm taking into account that they're pretty isolated back there on 10th, aren't they? I mean, I think it's probably needed for what they needed, but doesn't justify it being metal. But I think it'll be all right.
Right now, you couldn't build the metal shed.
I know you can't.
You can't.
Yeah.
So this one is a much larger one. Usually when they start to get this size, they turn over more into a stick, wood stick structure with siding and shingles. But in this particular case, it's an all metal building, but that does fit within code.
I asked if I thought that was going to be for an animal or for animals like horses you mentioned.
They have a barn for their horses. This would be to store equipment, food, stuff for their horses, as well as to maintain, equipment that would maintain their property, lawnmowers, other type of equipment. They're just in a need of more space, indoor space, and the structures that they have right now. I flip back to this location. Hopefully my cursor matches up almost, and I can't move any further to the west there, but to the right of my arrow are their existing structures, which are located in the floodplain. So if they were to have a major flood event down there, they're not going to be able to rebuild, and that'll be their high ground, so to speak. So that's why they're looking for that third accessory structure located out of the floodway.
Makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have no other questions. Nothing else? Motion, please.
Guzekowski makes a motion that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plans for the third accessory structure for the property at 10991 South 10th Avenue, subject to all codes being met.
Hannah seconds.
Roll call.
Hannah, aye.
Johnston, no.
Grillo, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Okay. Item H has been rescheduled to the meeting of August 14th.
If we could get a motion to hold that item, though,
Oh,
please.
we
It
do
was
need a-
per applicant request, but we are requesting a motion to hold it to the August 14th meeting.
Thank you for that, Carrie. Can we get a motion to hold?
Guzekowski will make a motion that the Plan Commission hold the conditional use permit until August 14th, Plan Commission meeting?
Hannah seconds.
Roll call.
Hannah, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Waiting on me. Item I is a certified survey map submitted by Mike Faber, Ryan Business Park LLC, dividing the properties at 741 West Ryan Road. Carrie?
So the proposal is to divide and reconfigure the existing lot that's shown in red. There will be a couple of things to keep in mind. This is going to be one of several CSMs that affect Ryan Business Park this evening. And on your screen right now is part of the certified survey map. There are 3 lots that are going to be proposed within this particular certified survey map. Lot 1 will have 6.9 acres approximately. It contains the existing buildings that's north of the creek, so the existing agricultural residential area. And this portion will be retained by the current landowners. Lot 2 will be approximately 31.7 acres south of the creek. That will be conveyed to the applicant, which would be the Ryan Business Park, and will be part of the proposed PUD. Outlot 1 will contain the remaining acreage, which is inclusive of 70 feet from the center line of the creek south, and that will be conveyed to Milwaukee County. That's part of that land swap that's been discussed tonight. I will draw your attention to the fact that it does appear, at least on the surface, that Lot 2 would be landlocked by this CSM. However, this is a temporary condition, as you'll see with CSM number 4, for further reconfiguration. Lot 2 will be part of a larger consolidation, and therefore access will be from 13th Street. We have requested that there is a condition of approval for this CSM, as with the subsequent CSMs that we will discuss tonight, to include a notation that this is part of another CSM that reconfigures the property. This is to avoid any controversy or concern about access for this lot. There are also wetlands and floodplain areas that have been delineated. They are shown on the map. There's a typo for South 13th Street that has been provided to the applicant. They are aware of it. It is going to be carried over through these CSMs that we're talking about, so you'll see some of the same comments. We did also provide some staff concerns. Those are in your packets for this evening. We did receive some responses back from the applicant regarding those. There is a suggested motion that if the Plan Commission is comfortable with the CSM as proposed, that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the certified survey map submitted by Michael Faber, Ryan Business Park LLC, for the property at 741 West Ryan Road be approved, subject to conditions 1 through 3. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Mr. Faber.
Happy with the staff's recommendation and happy to answer any questions about the items that Carrie noted on.
Okay. We'll open it up for the commissions. Any questions from Mr. Faber? No from Christina. Brian?
I do have one. Mr. Kohler, since you're waiting patiently back there, I do have a question for you.
Can you come up to the mic, please, Mr. Kaler?
Chuck Kaler, 901 West Ryan Road.
Thanks for coming up. Question for you on Lot 1. This parcel is going to remain in your possession when this is all split. For our Chapter 13 regulations, one of the things that we had was we didn't have the floodway contained along this channel. As you know, there's always some issues with this channel, drainage, maintenance, everything else. Would you be considered of an easement on that parcel 1?
The north side of the
On
creek?
the north side of the creek?
No, I would not.
Okay. That's all I had. Thanks.
Anybody else? Don? Chris? Okay, I do not have any questions either. So if not, motion, please.
Mayor, Commissioner, to answer Commissioner Johnston's question, however, my conversation with the staff was that she requested I would approach the county about the south side having an easement for the city to perform any maintenance in the creek, and I'm certainly amenable to ask the county.
Thank you for bringing that up. Appreciate it. If not, motion, please.
Johnson moves that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the certified survey map submitted by Michael Faber, Ryan Business Park LLC for the property at 741 West Ryan Road be approved with the following conditions. 1, that a label indicating the acreage for Outlot 1 is included on the map prior to recording. 2, that a note is included on the map prior to recording that references the proposed CSM number 4. And 3, that all technical corrections, including but not limited to spelling errors, minor coordinate geometry corrections as provided, and corrections required for compliance with municipal code and Wisconsin statutes are made prior to recording.
Guzikowski will second.
Roll call.
Hannah, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Item 6J is another certified survey map to be reviewed. Certified survey map submitted by Michael Faber, Ryan Business Park LLC, dividing the property at 9900 South 13th Street.
CSM 204 for this area. So again, we're dividing and reconfiguring the lot that is in red on your screen. And the proposed CSM will create 3 lots. Lot 1 is going to be approximately 12.3 acres, and that would include future development. And then Lot 2 would be approximately 2 acres. Outlot 2 would contain approximately 15.5 acres. That contains a majority of the wetlands and floodplain on the property, and that would also be conveyed to Milwaukee County as part of the land swap. As with the previous CSM, it appears that Lot 2 is landlocked, but this is temporary. It will be reconfigured as part of the CSM number 4 that we will be discussing. That access will be from 13th Street for the larger reconfiguration of Lot 2. Again, wetlands and floodplain areas have been delineated. They are shown on the map. There is that typo for 13th Street, and we have submitted pretty much the same kind of concerns regarding access for easements and things like that. There is a suggested motion that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the certified survey map submitted by Michael Faber, Ryan Business Park LLC, for the property at 9900 South 13th Street be approved subject to conditions 1 through 3. Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you, Carrie. Questions? Nothing? Nothing for you this time, Mr. Faber. If not,
Nothing at that.
motion, please.
Johnson moves that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the certified survey map submitted by Michael Faber, Ryan Business Park LLC for the property at 9900 South 13th Street be approved with the following conditions. 1, that a label indicating the acreage for Lot 2 is included on the map prior to recording. 2, that a note is included on the map prior to recording that references the proposed CSM number 4. 3, that all technical corrections, including but not limited to spelling errors, minor coordinate geometry corrections as provided, and corrections required for compliance with the municipal code and Wisconsin statutes are made prior to recording.
Guzikowski, second.
Roll call.
Hannah, aye.
Johnson, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Item K is 3 of 4 of certified survey maps. It's a review of a certified survey map submitted by Michael Faber, Ryan Business Park LLC, dividing the property at 9600 South 13th Street. Carrie.
Again, 3 lots are being proposed, and we'll just skip ahead and we'll talk about what they are. Lot 1 is about 28 acres, and that'll be conveyed to Ryan Business Park. Outlot 3 will be approximately 3.6 acres. It contains a portion of the creek, which is approximately 70 feet north and 70 feet south of the center line, and much of the floodway. It will be retained by Milwaukee County as part of that previously discussed land swap. Outlot 4 will be approximately 1.2 acres. It contains a portion of the creek, again 70 feet north and south of the center line, and also retained by Milwaukee County. You will notice that there is an 80-foot gap between outlots 3 and 4. This will be part of Lot 1, and it's intended for public right-of-way purposes that will serve the business park. Again, wetlands and floodplains are shown. There is that typo that we discussed before. The staff concerns were submitted to the applicant prior to the staff report being written, and there were responses received. There is a suggested motion that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the certified survey map submitted by Michael Faber, Ryan Business Park LLC, for the property at 9600 South 13th Street be approved, subject to conditions 1 through 3. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Mr. Faber is here to answer any questions if the commission has them. Chris, anything?
No, I was just going to mention something about some of this being landlocked, but I don't need to.
With the typo. I'd like to mention the typo.
On anything?
Yep.
Brian's still studying there.
Oh, I'm good.
If not, we can come back. Christina, anything?
I'm resisting not to ask about the
This is the place
Oh,
to do
should
it
I?
if you have a question.
Your question will probably be answered in CSM number 4, in which point it'll all be reconfigured and all questions will be answered by the CSM gods.
Okay, I'm sorry what I'm going to say. So this is going to impact the TIA, the traffic impact analysis that you're doing for the entire parcel. So if you are just landlocking and you have no access from 13th Street, no?
No.
No, we have retained the traffic consultant to study and provide all of the traffic projections for both the large user and the multi-user scenarios, and those will be submitted to the DOT and to the county and to the city for analysis and comfort and approvals for the impacts to both Ryan Road and 13th Street. And so the individual parcels configuration won't affect it because we've considered both scenarios.
So that answered my question that I asked.
There we go. Brian, anything? Nope. Okay, if not, motion, please.
Johnson moves that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the certified survey map submitted by Michael Faber, Ryan Business Park LLC for the property at 9600 South 13th Street be approved with the following conditions. 1, that a label indicating the acreage for Outlot 4 is included on the map prior to recording. 2, that a note is included on the map prior to recording that references the proposed CSM number 4. 3, that all technical corrections, including but not limited to spelling errors, minor coordinate geometry corrections as provided, and corrections required for compliance with the municipal code and Wisconsin statutes are made prior to recording.
Hannah seconds.
Roll call.
Hannah, aye.
Johnson, aye.
Bill, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Kuzikowski.
And item 6L is the last of the certified survey maps submitted by Michael Faber, Ryan Business Park LLC, dividing and reconfiguring the properties at 741 West Ryan Road and 9600, 9700, and 9900 South 13th Street. Carrie.
Okay, so this affects all of the properties that we have just reviewed this evening. And rather than going into the CSM right away, what I'm going to show you is kind of a composite. What's on your screen is how all of those lots lay out. This is what's being proposed. So Lot 2, I've combined all the CSMs here so you can see. Lot 2 will actually be one lot going out to...
Still looking at
You're not seeing it.
the prior.
Well, then I'll just stop talking and then I'll set up so that you can see it. How about now? Is that better?
Zoom in a little bit.
So this is a compilation of all the proposed CSMs. Unfortunately, it's still overlapping, showing that L-shaped configuration for the county. That's actually going away because Lot 2 will go all the way out to 13th Street. So this is taking out that northern portion of 741 West Ryan Road. It incorporates some of the parcels that have the land swap with the county, and then it shows what will be included in the business park. Now, this is the proposed CSM. It's several pages long, so bear with me here. We're going to start with Lot 1. There are 4 lots proposed. Lot 1 will be approximately 16.2 acres. It's primarily created from Lot 1 of CSM, the CSM for 9900 South 13th Street, and a portion of 9700 South 13th Street. 9700 South 13th Street is a parcel all on its own, so it was not incorporated into the previous CSM, so just keep that in mind. Lot 2 will be approximately 75.4 acres. It's created from a portion of Lot 1 for the CSM for 9600 South 13th Street, a portion of 9700 South 13th Street, Lot 2 of CSM, the CSM for 9900 South 13th Street, and Lot 2 of the CSM for 741 West Ryan Road. So that's how that whole reconfiguration of the previous CSM lots gets you all the way out to 13th Street. So Lot 2 is no longer landlocked. It will have access to 13th. Lot 3 is approximately 2.6 acres. It's created from a portion of Lot 1 of the CSM for 9600 South 13th Street. That's on the second page. And then Lot 4 finally is going to be approximately 11.9 acres, and that's created from a portion of Lot 1 of the CSM for 9600 South 13th Street. Wetlands and floodplains are also delineated and shown on all pages. We have that typo that we talked about. There were some staff concerns that were submitted. However, there was not enough time between the time that the report was drafted and tonight to get comments back on the concerns. So they are listed in your report. We talked about an overall exhibit, tried to put that together for the Plan Commission before we talked about the CSM itself. There's going to be some consideration of easements and talking about access to the outlot for drainage considerations, possibly the easement for roadway access. We have a floodplain label issue that we've already discussed with the applicant. We're fine with moving forward on that one, and then a drainage easement on the creek for maintenance. So those are some considerations included in your packet for discussion. There's a suggested motion that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the certified survey map submitted by Michael Faber, Ryan Business Park LLC for the properties at 741 West Ryan Road and 9600, 9700, and 9900 South 13th Street be approved subject to conditions 1 through 2. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Any questions for Mr. Faber? Take your time. It was kind of a lot there if you have any questions.
Mayor, I have a small drawing that I could just circulate that I think helps supplement.
Okay.
Up that this CSM creates essentially 5 parcels, and we had to choose whether we wanted to do the CSMs to knit this all together, choosing the large user approach or the multi-user approach. We can always subdivide the large user approach, so this might make Alderman Guzikowski happy, but we chose the large user approach, and that's what this final CSM number 4, that won't be its official number, of course, but of the 4 that we've requested. Number 5 is the small connection that we have up to Ryan Road. That'll be the main entrance. And it's not part of the CSMs at the moment just because it's already a standalone parcel and doesn't need to be subdivided. It will be added in a future CSM when we create the public street that comes through for the crossing over the creek.
Great, thank you. Any questions?
Did you just say the main entrance will be on Ryan Road?
Yes, it's our intent that the primary entrance to the business park would be a signalized boulevard access point coming off Ryan Road.
Okay, you answered my question. So that's the signal. Okay. Thank you. That's it.
Ryan, anything?
Just as far as the staff comments on here, an overall exhibit for the CSM, we can get one of those
I'll
put
make
together.
the surveyor do that post haste.
Okay. Easements we got in here already.
Second one I do have a question about. Our concern with easements being on the CSMs is there are lots of small easements along the edges, and it could get very difficult to see what you're looking at. It might be better to have an easement exhibit, which has the same standing as a CSM when it's recorded, but I think that would probably be cleaner, and I would suggest that.
And that would be fine. I think that can be shown too on an overall exhibit. The trail easement extending through the Milwaukee County lands.
Yeah, we discussed that with Milwaukee County because their trail pass is always using many public streets, and because once the trail easements over on the far east side along the railroad tracks will connect to the part of passing alongside the creek that's already their land, they don't need an easement on their own land, and we can't record the trail easement until we own the properties. But the process of owning the properties in a mass closing, when we close and buy all these, that land will be swapped to the county. So they'll have access across their path there. Then when we dedicate a finished street from that point, crossing the creek and back out to Ryan Road, our discussions with the city have included that that road will have a sidewalk. And since the county trail system uses public sidewalks, municipal sidewalks in many locations, the Assistant Corporation Counsel for the county said, well, then we don't need an easement there. We'll just be using public access at that point. That'll get them out to Ryan Road.
I guess my concern is who owns and maintains those easements or the trail itself. If Milwaukee County's installing that and maintaining it, it's on their land. We don't need an easement. If the city is owning and maintaining that, we need an easement to cover ourselves through their property.
The trail is a county trail, so their thinking is they have to maintain their trail on the actual proposed easement along the east side along the railroad tracks and through any property they own, which they have envisioned would have a boardwalk across the wetlands at the south end into this new proposed neighborhood park, city-county park. At the north end, since that's their access is just to connect to what will be a city sidewalk, they didn't envision that they needed an easement to let the public ride their bikes or walk along a city sidewalk.
And that'll fall in the public right of way for a sidewalk. It's just across their property. So that was our concern.
I guess I wouldn't want to speak on their behalf too strongly, but I think their perspective would be it's public property because it's county land. So citizens of Oak Creek are free to walk across it without an easement.
Bigger issue, as long as they're maintaining it, it's fine. We don't need the easement. And I guess the last one would be the road easement between outlots 3 and 4 for the construction of the bridge.
Yeah, our preference would strongly be to have that road easement not be an easement. I guess I would have to rely on my attorney, but it'll be a dedicated public street. So when it's physically completed, we would be dedicating it as right-of-way to the city.
Again, it's the construction of that bridge on Milwaukee County property. So the city's protected developers, the outlot would be...
At that point, the bridge would be constructed on property I still own until I complete it and then convey it to the city.
But when is the land transfer happening for those two outlots, outlots 3 and 4?
There is no land transfer. Milwaukee County retains the ownership that they currently have of those two outlots.
Okay. So you're able to construct this bridge within that 70-foot swath?
80-foot wide swath, yes, that's correct. But we do have construction easements in our agreement with the county to be able to work within that 140-foot wide swath, both for any purpose related to the road and bridge, as well as our intent to shrink the flood fringe and reconfigure once we come up with the engineering to show that it works and get all the necessary approvals.
Okay. Perfect.
Questions, Brian? Dawn, anything? I think I got everybody. If nothing else, motion, please.
Kuzikowski will make a motion that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the certified survey map submitted by Michael Faber, Ryan Business Park LLC, for the properties at 741 West Ryan Road and 9600, 9700, and 9900 South 13th Street be approved with the following conditions. 1, that all easements are shown on the map prior to recording, and 2, that all technical corrections, including but not limited to spelling errors, minor coordinate geometry, and corrections as provided, and corrections required for compliance with the Municipal Code of Wisconsin statutes and are made prior to recording.
Anna seconds.
Roll call.
One second. Do you want to add in there that an overall exhibit is added to the CSM as a condition?
That's up to the Plan Commission if you want that to be a condition.
Yes.
So number 3,
Start with that, Chris.
Yes.
let me come up with a little bit of language for you. Hold on.
Councilmember Guzekowski, was your motion starting with the easements being shown on the overall exhibit?
And a point of clarification on that, that can be in an exhibit as discussed. Proposed motion to include condition number 3, that an exhibit showing the overall division is included on the map prior to recording.
Carrie stated.
Anna seconds.
Brian's not happy.
No. Include the easement exhibits as well?
Number 1, that all easements are shown on the map in an exhibit prior to recording.
Yes.
Okay, so Alderman Guzekowski concurs. We need a second.
Anna seconds.
Okay. Roll call.
Anna, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzekowski.
Okay.
So was, just for my clarification, was that easement shown in an easement exhibit?
Yes.
Thank you. Great. Thank you.
Before we adjourn, as always, I want to thank staff. We had a really heavy agenda tonight. A lot of really good questions and concerns from the citizens. Well done, folks. I want to thank the planning staff, city administrator, financial director, and our IT guy. It really helps when we don't have the answers, that we have the expertise behind us with you guys. So.
Mayor and Commissioners, I'd also like to add my thanks. As the applicant, we're asking your staff to do a lot of stuff in a shorter than normal amount of time, and it's complicated stuff. And not only are they very cooperative and a great attitude, they're doing a great job, and we very much appreciate it.
Yeah, we really do have the best people.
I work in a lot of communities. I second that.
Yeah, I agree. So, and then again, I got to put a plug in. Our farmers market continues this Saturday. General information: the corn is in and it's very good. So,
local corn.
Saturday, 9 o'clock, Dawn?
Correct.
9 to 1.
So get out there, enjoy, discover, and celebrate Oak Creek. Thank you, and adjournment, please.
Perillo moves to adjourn at 8:29.
Anna seconds.
Roll call.
Anna, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Perillo, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Thank you all. Have a good night.